In the early 1980s, the Dallas Cowboys boasted an extremely talented roster with plenty of Pro Bowlers, All-Pros, and future Hall of Famers peppered throughout. So for running back Timmy Newsome, the Cowboys' sixth-round draft pick in 1980 out of Winston-Salem State University, earning a roster spot was going to be far from easy. In fact, his college head coach, Bill Hayes, said as much when the two met soon after Newsome's selection by Dallas.
He says, I don't know if that's the best place for you. I said, why? He says, well, they just came off of the Super Bowl a couple of years previously, and they have all the backs they need. I said, yeah, that is a problem, huh? So when I got here, there was Dorsett.
All the time in the world, look out, Dorsett.
Ron Springs, Robert Newhouse, Scott Laidlaw.
Breaking into the Washington secondary and breaking. Laidlaw to the 40.
And so if I was going to make it, somebody was going to have to get released.
And someone did get released. Five-year veteran Scott Laidlaw. For Newsome, making the team was a monumental first step in his fledgling professional career. But as he would soon learn, securing a job in the NFL doesn't guarantee game time on the field.
Well, we had a fantastic offense. I think Drew and I, major complaint was that we just couldn't get the ball enough. That's how many good athletes we had. We were star-studded. We just didn't have enough balls. I think we looked somewhat like the LA Clippers with Harden and Kawhi Leonard. We just didn't have enough.
In his first two seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, Newsome paid his dues returning kickoffs and filling in at fullback, especially in short yardage situations, which was not unusual in Tom Landry's system. Young players were introduced to the NFL slowly and had to earn Landry's trust before receiving more playing time. A younger Timmy Newsome would have been shocked to learn that the NFL was in his future. His favorite sport growing up was America's pastime, baseball, and baseball remained his sport of choice until...
Football was the last of the sports that I actually got really good at. I was a cornerback, I was a safety, I was a linebacker. On offense, I was a fullback, I was a tailback. But my senior year, I played fullback and I didn't run the ball a lot, but I was captain of the defense. So I always thought that if I was going to go to college and play football, then it would be on the defensive side of the football. I never envisioned playing running back at all.
But Coach Bill Hayes had other ideas.
So I got to Winston-Salem State University, and I'm sitting in the back of the room thinking that the defense was in the back of the room, and Coach Hayes said, is Timmy Newsome in here? And I said, yeah. I raised my hand. He said, I want to see you after the meeting. So after the meeting, I walk up. I said, yeah, Coach. He said, I'm going to put you on offense. I said, Coach, I can't play offense. I can't play running back. He said, I need more running backs. He said, I don't have anybody who can run. And he said, so I'm going to move you to offense. And that's how it started.
As far as Newsome was concerned, this was not welcome news.
I was devastated, completely devastated. I just didn't think I had the skills to play running back.
As a freshman, though, Newsome rushed for 571 yards, averaging 4.6 yards per carry, and scoring one touchdown, a solid start to his college career.
As luck would have it, we ran what was known then as a veer offense. And with the veer offense, you don't really have to be creative in your running style, you just have to run to a point. The quarterback will either give you the football or he won't. That was the off-tackle stuff, and then you just followed him on a veer route where he'd pitch you the ball if he kept it. So I got real good at that, and so that's how I was able to learn on the fly, so to speak.
But in the second to last game of the season, he tore ligaments in his left knee, an injury that would require surgery. Newsome feared his career was over because after his knee surgery,
we didn't have a weight room. So there was no way to rehab the knee once I got it operated on. So I decided to call my mother and ask her, I needed something out of the Sears and Roebuck's catalog. And she said, well, what is it? I said, well, I need this weight set. It has this leg extension machine on it. And she said, well, how much is it? I said, it's about $450. Well, in today's terms, it's like $1,800. And without hesitation, she said, okay. And so when I got home after my freshman year, I rehabbed my knee every day, and I was ready to go for my sophomore campaign and didn't miss a beat.
In fact, he would go on to finish his 4-year college career with a total of 3,843 rushing yards, 38 touchdowns, and average a whopping 6.1 yards per carry. He earned many honors, including being named NAIA Division I First Team All-America in both his junior and senior years. And so Timmy Newsome, once devastated by the move from defense to offense, had rushed himself onto scouts' radars as the 1980 NFL Draft approached.
To watch more Dallas Cowboys content on your connected TV, download the Cowboys Now app on Amazon Fire, Roku, and Apple TV.
As an NFL draft prospect, the 6'1", 235-pound Timmy Newsome was an intriguing combination of size, strength, smarts, and skill. He had a fullback's body, but his stride and glide running style was that of a tailback. On draft night, these traits proved to be irresistible to the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, I gave the telephone number to all of the teams where they could call the residence assistant in my dormitory. And so at about 6:30 in the evening, she summons me down to her office, and I answered the phone, and it was Gil Brandt. And he says, Timmy, this is Gil Brandt from the Dallas Cowboys. We drafted you in the 6th round, and you're gonna have a star on your helmet. We'll give you the details later.
It didn't take long for his teammates to notice Newsome's unique presence in the backfield.
You know, Timmy brought a lot of mass to the Cowboys. He was big. Timmy was over 230 pounds, very muscular guy. He's not the guy that you see right now. He's a jogger now. He's lost all the weight. But when he was a player, he was a big stud. And he was agile, a guy with speed, intellect, and the ability to block. He was all that Tom Landry wanted.
Well, Timmy was a big back. You know, he was one of those featured Zonka type of back. He was a big back. You know, he was a bruiser type. But we called him Tippin' Timmy, and it had nothing to do with him being soft from that standpoint. It had the way that he ran. He was elusive. A guy that big, and it wasn't really quick, but somehow he was elusive and could make people miss, or he could run you over.
With the smaller, speedier Tony Dorsett at running back, Coach Landry placed Newsome on the fullback depth chart, which was a bit of a curveball for the former Veer offense running back.
The problem for me is that I was not a fullback at Winston-Salem State University, and so I hadn't blocked anybody. So I had to learn to be a blocker before I was a runner. I knew how to run, but I just didn't know how to block. That was the troubling part for me, was just trying to learn how to block on the pro level.
That said, Newsome ultimately thought the move to fullback would benefit him.
Well, I thought it was a good move because Tony Dorsett wasn't going anywhere. I mean, it was not like I was going to beat him out. I mean, so, but I thought I had a chance to break into the starting lineup, even though they had Ron Springs, who they moved from tailback to fullback, and Robert Newhouse, who was, you know, up there in age, and so he only played a couple of years when I got here. So I thought my best opportunity was to play fullback.
Not only was it a solid opportunity to see the playing field, but it also provided Newsome the chance to learn the pro game, and at a high level. That is to say, at Tom Landry's level.
The one unique thing I loved about the offense is that Coach Landry kept everything exciting and interesting. We had multiple formations. We had to learn a lot. There were a lot of nuances to the offense. Each practice and each week, there was always a different twist. The fullback sometimes played tight end. The tight end sometimes played fullback. So there was always something innovative and new that we had to practice.
Yes, in Landry's offense, the fullback was a demanding position, both physically and intellectually.
The fullback on the Cowboys team he was usually the guy that knew where everyone had to be. Ron Springs was a starter, but he brought in Timmy Newsome because Timmy had that same intellect in regards to knowing where to be, who to pick up, you know, who to block on the running plays for Dorsett.
Appropriately enough for how Timmy's career started, Landry believed in the fullback. Now, the fullback was different things. I mean, in the early 60s, the fullback was Don Perkins, who could also be a tailback. And then it was Walt Garrison, who could also be a tailback if you needed him to. And eventually, it became Robert Newhouse. So there's a specific role for the fullback.
However, after 2 seasons at fullback, Coach Landry decided to move Newsome to tailback, behind Tony Dorsett. From Newsome's perspective, this was going to reduce his playing time. Frustrated, he left training camp.
The reason I left had more to do with the opportunity that I didn't think I would have at tailback. And if they left me at tailback, there was no way I was going to beat out Tony Dorsett. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So I thought it was a disappointment to, one, to have maybe failed, and then two, not get an opportunity to play.
Tony walked in the door the Heisman Trophy winner. He won a national championship and a Super Bowl in back-to-back years. You know, Tony was the guy. He wanted to be the guy. He brought himself into things to be the guy, and he got treated like the guy.
When news of Newsome leaving camp made the rounds, it was Landry himself who called him up and persuaded Newsome to come back and play tailback.
So when I decided to come back, I decided to just play exclusively tailback, and I did.
As Dorsett's backup, Newsome enjoyed some of the biggest moments of his career. On December 13th, 1982, at the Houston Oilers, he turned a 15-yard sideline pass from Danny White into a 46-yard touchdown reception. Earlier in that game, he'd also caught a pass for 43 yards.
And he was a perfect complement to Tony Dorsett because he was just the opposite. He was a big, powerful guy, and Tony was a little quick, darting kind of a running back, and he was a great pass protector. He was a good route runner and a ball catcher coming out of the backfield. Timmy could do it all, and that's what made him, I think, so valuable to our team. He just complemented everything that we were trying to do.
The next season, on October 9th, 1983, in a home game versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Cowboys were down 24-17 late in the fourth quarter when Danny White found Newsome on a 5-yard swing pass.
A little spring shuffle there and got the first down for the Cowboys before going out of bounds.
You know, excuse me, Frank. You know, it's nice to see Tampa in this situation in a position to win without Doug Williams.
I'm sure it is from Tampa Bay standpoint. Newsome at the 20. Newsome, touchdown.
And so it's just a regular 5-yard out. So I catch the football and I turn upfield and there's some space, some daylight. Doug Donnelly just got in front of his guy just enough to where I just ran past him, and then the only other person I had to defeat was the safety coming over. So I saw him coming over and I said, okay, well, he's gonna try to just knock my legs out from under me. And so I just jumped over him and scored.
Newsome turned up the sideline, avoided tacklers while somehow staying in bounds, and went the distance for a 52-yard touchdown. The score forced overtime, and the Cowboys went on to win the game.
Yeah, I remember it well. We call him Tippin' Timmy Newsome because he went down the sideline and just kept his balance, broke several tackles, as I remember.
That secured the game for us. And we remained, if I'm not mistaken, we remained undefeated after that game. And that was Timmy. I think that was Timmy at his best at that time.
In 1984, Tom Landry moved Timmy Newsome back to fullback, and by season's end, he'd claimed the starting role. With experience at tailback, fullback, On kickoff returns, in short yardage situations, and in catching passes out of the backfield, Newsome was the very definition of versatile.
I mean, he was a tailback, but Tom made him a fullback because that's where he saw him in the offense and that's where he needed him, and really never complained about playing fullback because he got on the field. He was a consummate team player.
That was the thing I think that set him apart. He was a better pass catcher than any of the other backs that we had, but he was big enough to play tight end. So he was like a tight end coming out of the backfield, but he was faster than most tight ends. So bigger than a tailback, faster than a tight end. He was that kind of that in-between guy that teams really didn't know how to defense when he got in the game.
Landry's offenses are so complex that you want to have mismatches on the field at all times. And when you look at Newsome, you know, he big shoulder pads. I mean, he was a big guy, you know, but I think he was always kind of hard to gauge on what type of player he was, because, you know, he looked like a fullback, but he ran like a running back as well, and he caught like a tight end and a receiver.
So for 2 seasons, Newsome enjoyed increased playing time as the starting fullback, sharing a backfield with future Hall of Famer Tony Dorsett. Then in 1986, an astounding turn of events occurred for Newsome, for Dorsett, for all of Cowboys Nation.
In '86, when the USFL folded, and they got Herschel Walker dropped into their laps literally in August. I know this because the principals have told me. Tex Schramm, who was overjoyed at having signed Herschel, called Paul Hackett, who was then the nominal offensive coordinator. He said, "I want Walker and Dorsett on the field together." And Hackett said, "Great, who's going to block?" And Tex said, "That's your problem."
It was billed as the dream backfield. Tony Dorsett, Herschel Walker, both Heisman Trophy winners, both with blazing speed and both offering different running styles. The smaller Dorsett with his shifty moves, and the bigger Walker, who often chose to run through would-be tacklers rather than go around them. It all sounded great on paper, and it was the talk of the town.
I decided to talk to Coach Landry about it. And I said, "Coach, there's this talk about Walker and Dorsett playing in the same backfield." And I said, "Well, if you're just going to give it to him, you know, can you kind of just tell me now, because I don't want to waste my time not being able to compete for the job." And he laughed and he says, "You know, Timmy, Herschel's really not a fullback. He's a tailback." He said, "Now, will we play him at fullback some? Yeah. But he's going to play some tight end. He's going to play some tail. He's going to be all over the place." And so that gave me some assurance that I was not going to necessarily going anywhere.
And so the 1986 season began with Dorsett and Walker sharing time at tailback and with Newsome starting at fullback. But with 4 games remaining, Landry gave the dream backfield its chance. Dorsett and Walker lined up together to close out the season, and the Cowboys lost all 4 games.
And emotion in this strike.
Football strike
Situation.
Sick of the strike.
It appears the players lost this round badly as they lost 3 weeks of pay, still do not have a contract.
To file an antitrust suit.
Will neither play nor be paid.
Wondering when they would play again.
They stood up for something that I believe in, and there's still a lot of things out there that I do still believe in.
The last 2 seasons of Timmy Newsome's career were marred by an NFL players' strike in 1987 and by a calf injury in 1988 that sidelined him for the final 8 games of the season. The calf injury was especially frustrating.
At the end of the '88 season, I had announced my intentions to retire because I had the injury. We went 3-13. We just weren't doing the kinds of things as a team that I felt we should be doing. And so I announced the retirement. I went to see Coach Landry, and he talked me out of it. And he says, "You're still playing at a high level. You keep yourself in tremendous shape." He said, "There's no reason for you to quit unless you just mentally just don't want to do it anymore." I said, "Coach, I'll be honest with you. I'm just tired of losing." And he laughed. He said, "Aren't we all?" And then he said, I tell you what, we're going to get this turned around. And he said, just come on back and we'll continue this thing. Well, about a month or so later, he gets fired.
The Jerry Jones ownership era had begun, and with it, Jimmy Johnson replaced Landry as head coach.
And so Jimmy comes in, and Dave Shula, who's Don Shula's son, is the offensive coordinator. And he called me into his office. He said, I understand you talked about retiring. He said, well, what are your intentions? I said, well, I told Coach Landry I would play and I'll continue to play. I said, however, if you all think that you can find somebody to replace me, I'm all for that as well. And so that's the reason they drafted the fullback.
In late August of 1989, the Cowboys released Timmy Newsome. His 9-year career was over, all of it spent with the Dallas Cowboys. He was a situational player who made the most of his opportunities. In fact, throughout his entire career, Timmy Newsome averaged a touchdown every 18 times he touched the football on offense. He once told reporters, "For no more than I've carried the football and touched the football through the years, I've made some big plays. That is something I've always felt I could do."
I may be influenced by knowing Timmy through the years. I may be influenced by knowing him now, and I may be influenced by knowing the kind of human being he is and seeing the way he conducts himself in the community. But I've always thought of him as someone who was underrated, not given quite his due.
And I always thought as a team, we had players that were sitting on the sideline that could probably start for any other team in the league. Because when one guy went down, the team never missed a beat. So there's a guy back there who's waiting for his chance, and if he wasn't here, he'd be starting some other place.
Would he have flourished more on a different team in a different system? Who knows? But he was a good football player, and I think that he learned a lot and grew a lot and gave a lot. They were better for having had him.